Hello, beauty. I want to share with you a thread that I recently read that is the inspiration for today's show. It's from Cali Girl _ Texas World. And she said, after finishing HR, meaning Heated Rivalry, I felt like I was in complete psychosis. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. I figured it would fade. 2 months later, I have accepted the fact that it's changed my brain chemistry. I deserve sunshine. I deserve happiness. I deserve to be loved hard. I deserve the freedom to be myself unapologetically. I deserve a better skincare routine. My fellow cottage dwellers, we all deserve this and so much more. And this thread got me thinking about worthiness and midlife and the wound that is a very human wound. We've definitely talked about worthiness a lot on this podcast, and I think that I spend a lot of time talking about it because I feel like it is the wound that is at the core of everything that isn't going well in our lives or isn't aligned with how we would like it to be. Because we make choices based on feeling like we are not enough in one way, shape, or form. So yes, this pod is yet another Heated Rivalry inspired episode. You don't necessarily have to have seen Heated Rivalry, but if you haven't yet, what are you even doing with your life? I don't know. I'm not sure we can be friends. But anyway, so this woman who wrote this thread, she is remembering that she deserves more. I truly believe that there is a remembering of this worthiness within us all. And I think that this show and plenty of other fictional pieces of media have the power to do this for us. They have the power to wake us up to a new level of self-worth. And this is the kind of work that I do with women when you are waking up to the idea that you deserve more and you're not quite sure what pivots you need to make in order to get there. And there's a link in the show notes if you want to learn more about that. So let's talk about this from an energetic perspective, focusing specifically on the heart center, which governs worthiness. It governs desire. It governs determination and willpower. And the whole idea of I deserve lives energetically in the heart center. Only about 30-ish% of the population has this center defined. If you don't know if yours is defined, you can get your chart on my website, www.lorilisai.com. Go to get your chart, put in your details, look for the tiniest triangle, and see if that's colored in or not. If it's colored in, that means that you have a defined heart center. If it's not colored in, it means it's either undefined or open. So if you have a defined heart center, that means that you are within that 30% of the population. If you don't, that means you're in the majority. And when you don't have that defined heart center, it means that you're walking around with an inconsistent level of self-worth, of sense of worthiness. I think that as women, our conditioning cements this in. And even for people who have definition here, the norms that we live in and the society that we live in, the patriarchy that we live in, the unspoken, the baked in misogyny, all of those things contribute to a sense of lesser self-worth as women. On the outside, this looks like people pleasing. This looks like feeling unmoored by changes in midlife with your hormones, with kids leaving, with less mothering, with career shifts. So all of those things can contribute to this fluctuating sense of self-worth. I also wanted to mention that there is a biological correlation between low self-worth and self-esteem and digestive issues. And I find this so interesting because so many women in midlife are struggling with those hormonal fluctuations. And hormones are very connected to your gut biome and how healthy your gut is. And this is a way of just reminding yourself that everything is connected. When you feel like you are a sovereign being who deserves whatever the fuck you want, your hormones and your physical health is going to improve, is going to feel better. And that is part of the reason that I am always harping on these issues, is because I know that these things, when we sort them out, when we start living in alignment in these ways, that we will ensure our own physical health as well. So the heart center really demands our focus in midlife, because in our 20s and 30s, we're building our adult lives by proving our worth, by working hard, by establishing ourselves in our careers or whatever that looks like. And there's a lot of accepting of kind of being at the bottom of the totem pole, or accepting crumbs, essentially, because we believe that we have to start at the bottom. And what's interesting to me is I think that combined with the rest of the messages we're getting as women in this patriarchal society, I think that those two pieces converge, this feeling like we have to build from the bottom up, and the misogyny that we deal with. I feel like those two pieces converge, and they root into our sense of self-worth. And after years and years of living in those conditions, we just sort of ingrain it in our sense of self. Like, I don't deserve better than this, or I should just be grateful for what I have and not ever look to the bigger and better, because this is good enough. And I think that by the time we hit midlife, our heart center is tired. And when it gets tired, two things happen. We either check out and just accept that this is all I'm ever going to get, or we wake the fuck up and we say, wait a minute, actually, I do deserve more. I deserve exactly what I desire. And the collapse that I see is so many women speaking to the fact that they have phoned it in, or they have just sort of accepted that this is the way things are going to be, sometimes without even realizing it, until something like Heated Rivalry comes along and wakes us up. A show like this shows us a tenderness that we aren't used to seeing. And suddenly we see something in front of us that resonates so deeply. With Shane and Ilya, we see a vulnerability that allows for them to see one another deeply, which resonates with us because oftentimes by midlife, you've been married for decades and you maybe don't feel that level of being seen in a deep way, which is something I talked about on the HRT Heated Rivalry episode. So maybe we are no longer feeling seen in our relationships, or in the lives that we've built around us that no longer feel aligned with who we are becoming. And we may be in this in-between phase of like, I now have a better sense of who I want to become, and I'm still in this life that I built up until this point, and I'm not quite sure how to get from point A to point B. And again, this is the work that I do, is helping women sort this out. How do we start taking 1-degree pivots to get you from point A to point B? This is an invitation into heart-centered healing. And yes, I do believe that heart-centered healing can happen through immersing yourself in media arts, in watching things like Heated Rivalry, in allowing those feelings to come up and be felt, in reading the book series. And maybe you're not into Heated Rivalry. Maybe it's something else that resonated with you, that spoke to you in a way that made you feel deeply again and made you question whether things could be different. So let's talk a little bit more about the heart center. If your heart is undefined, then you may find yourself overcommitting to prove your worth. At this point in your life, if you're in midlife, is probably unconscious, honestly. So look for signs of it instead of maybe you can't answer that question. Geez, have I been overcommitting? Instead, look for signs like burnout. Have you been overcommitting and expending all of your beautiful energy on things because you're trying to prove something to somebody? Maybe you are staying in relationships to prove something to other people, whether it's your kids, who are maybe grown at this point. Is there still something that you're trying to prove to them? Are you trying to prove something to other family members? Are you trying to prove something to the community that you have built and that you have spent the last couple of decades in? The other thing that can happen with the undefined heart center is not really knowing what you desire, what you want. This happens so often, the idea of having so much conditioning that you don't know what you want. And it's shows like this that light the fuck up out of your sacral that you're like, oh, okay, now I see something I want. So this is, especially if you have a sacral, so if you are a generator or a manifesting generator type, this is an invitation to get out into the world and listen to your body, listen to those pulls, and allow your body to tell you what you want. And take a moment to feel through that so you can identify it and be like, oh, okay, actually, I want that. And I'm going to go after it. And I think something like Heated Rivalry shows us things that maybe you didn't know you were allowed to want. Like a conversation I've had with a friend of mine about the Vegas scene where Ilya watches Shane on the bed pleasure himself. And the idea of being A, vulnerable enough to do that, B, maybe a poor choice of words, but ballsy enough to do that, and C, even thinking about wanting to do that. Like, wow, is that something maybe I'd want to do sometime? So allowing yourself to want whatever you feel drawn to. If your heart center is defined, so if you're in that 30-ish% of the population, then what may happen for you is you may suppress your desires in order to avoid conflict. Like, well, my desires don't matter that much. We can just do what you want to do. Even though you know clearly what it is that you want, the conditioning makes it so that it's really challenging for you to articulate that and or to admit to yourself that that's actually what you want. But let me tell you, if you have a defined heart, your desires are so, so important to your alignment. So for you with a defined heart center, you may be saying things like, I've been settling too much, because you recognize that you aren't allowing yourself to have what you desire, versus somebody who has an undefined heart is more in the camp of like, wow, I didn't even realize that I was allowed to want that. So what I want to invite you to do is to allow fantasy, to allow, in this case, Heated Rivalry, to allow those things to reveal to you what you have been denying. See it as a mirror, which we've talked about in the last couple of episodes. And when you allow yourself to see it as a mirror and use that mirror to ask yourself some deep questions, that's where the pivot happens. That's where you start to integrate what those messages from your body are telling you. So some of the things I have seen popping up on social media are things like women committing to hitting the gym and starting a new workout routine because they've been inspired by Shane and Elia. Yes, these 20-something young men who are ripped as shit, inspiring midlife women to be like, damn, I've been dealing with these extra 10 to 15 pounds and I am done with that shit. And being inspired to make changes because they want to feel better in their bodies. I love this so much. I've seen women talking about love and feeling like, wow, I had kind of given up and just said, well, I'm too old or I'll never meet anybody. And so why even bother wanting that? And compartmentalizing that part of themselves and putting it up on a shelf and believing that their time is over. Seeing this show lit something within them. That box on the shelf suddenly started shaking and fell off the shelf and said, pay attention to me. And the top came off and said, you do deserve exactly what is on your heart. And these are some of the beautiful changes that media can help us with when we are struggling, when we've shut off a part of ourselves. So a couple of questions that I invite you to ponder. What part of this story stirred something within you? Maybe it's multiple parts. And then after you answer that question, thinking about whether or not that feels impossible in your real life. And then the third part, which is the potential game changer, is asking yourself why. If it feels impossible in your real life, why? And questioning your assumptions. What assumptions are you making about why this feels impossible? Well, I can't do that because I'm 3 years till retirement, so I might as well just stay. Or I've been married for 35 years and it's just easier this way if I just stay and it's comfortable and I've got this house and I have kids and I have a mortgage and et cetera, et cetera. All of the 3D components to real life, which I'm not denying the importance of any of those things. All I'm asking for you to do is to question those assumptions. If you have a desire on your heart that feels impossible, question the assumptions that are making it feel impossible. Midlife is often a time when you ask yourself, do I actually want this marriage? Do I want sex like this? Do I want my sex life to be like it is right now? Or maybe I'd like a little heated rivalry heat coming back into it. How do I want to feel in my relationship? And do I feel worth that? Am I worthy of feeling the way I want to feel in my relationship? Friends of mine sent me messages immediately after watching this being like, holy shit, I want to be kissed like that again. I want to be loved like that again. I want to be looked at like that again. And that is a very real human desire, to be desired. So many women in midlife have not had that for many years, even decades maybe, because you've been in a stable relationship. And obviously I'm making vast oversimplifications here, but only to use them as an example to say that this is a reminder. We have the opportunity here to wake up, and you deserve to want what you want. Your wants are actual signs from the version of you who already has them. That's what I believe. I believe that your desires, if you feel a desire on your heart, it's like information in the neutrino stream that is being passed to you from that version of yourself who has that thing. So if you feel it in your body, in your heart, then it is for you. It is for a version of you. So I hope this episode helped you to consider some things that you are desiring. Consider that the feelings you're having about this show, the questions that it is bringing up within you, those are all valid. And questioning the assumption that those things are all impossible for you, that is my hope that you will take away from this episode. And if you want to work on these with support, using your specific human design, using your energetics as the permission slip that you didn't know you needed, then that is what I do. I will leave a link in the show notes. So until next time, beauties, I am sending you the strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.